come now to highlight key elements of creating an inclusive workspace for persons with disabilities. Accessibility is central to this effort and includes physical accessibility, such as accessible buildings, transportation, and workspaces. Communication accessibility, which promotes effective communication through tools like sign language and assistive technologies. And attitudinal accessibility, which focuses on fostering a culture of respect, inclusion, and non-discrimination. Creating an inclusive workspace also requires an understanding of reasonable accommodation and legal obligations, as well as the ability to identify and implement appropriate accommodations for employees with disabilities. In addition, inclusive policies and practices are essential. This involves reviewing and revising existing policies to ensure they are inclusive of people with disabilities, and developing inclusive human resources practices across recruitment, hiring, and promotion processes. Regarding communication and interaction skills, effective communication is essential and involves communicating respectfully and clearly with people with diverse communication needs, using appropriate language, and avoiding ableist terminology. Building inclusion also requires developing respectful and trusting relationships with people with disabilities while promoting meaningful interactions and peer support. Creating an inclusive environment further involves advocacy and action planning. This includes identifying and addressing systemic barriers to disability inclusion within both the organization and the community, as well as developing and implementing clear action plans. Finally, applying monitoring and evaluation through tracking progress on inclusion initiatives, evaluating the effectiveness of training, and making adjustments as needed. Here are key strategies for inclusive program delivery. First, it is important to identify and remove barriers that may prevent persons with disabilities from fully participating. This includes assessing program accessibility, addressing communication barriers, and removing attitudinal barriers that may hinder participation. Second, data collection and monitoring are essential. Collecting and analyzing data on the participation of people with disabilities allows programs to track progress and make adjustments to improve inclusivity. Additionally, community engagement by involving people with disabilities in the design and implementation program, as well as building partnerships with disability organizations. Creating an inclusive training space for persons with disabilities is essential to ensure meaningful participation and effective learning. First, physical accessibility. While selecting venues, choose ones that are accessible, with features such as ramps, elevators, wide doorways, adequate parking, and accessible restrooms. And make sure to provide flexible seating, including chairs with armrests and adjustable heights, and consider the needs of participants using wheelchairs or other mobility aids. Regarding visual aids, let them be clear and concise, with sufficient font size and contrast, and provide handouts in accessible formats, such as large print or electronic versions. Second, communication accessibility. Provide assistive technologies such as screen readers, magnifiers, and hearing loops. Ensure qualified sign language interpreters are available for participants who are deaf or hard of hearing. Consider communication supports such as real-time captioning or note takers as needed. Use clear and concise language, avoiding jargon or complex sentence structures. Third key component, where it is attitudinal accessibility. This involves using respectful and inclusive language, including person-first language and avoiding ableist terminology. It also means creating a welcoming and supportive environment that respects the dignity of all participants and values their equal opportunities, and encouraging and appreciating the unique perspectives and experiences of people with disabilities. Fourth is considering training materials. We have to ensure all materials are provided in accessible formats, such as electronic versions, large print, or audio recordings, and that the content is clear and concise, avoiding jargon and complex sentence structures, making sure to provide visual aids with sufficient font size and contrast. Finally, involve people with disabilities in the training process by consulting them during planning and delivery whenever possible, and regularly seeking feedback on the accessibility and inclusivity of the training. In going beyond, accommodations should focus on adjustments and assistive tools that persons with disabilities specifically need to participate in the digital business training program. These accommodations should be determined through an individualized assessment to ensure meaningful participation. It is critical to maintain confidentiality for participants who identify as persons with disabilities and to avoid spotlighting or sharing any details about their disabilities with other stakeholders. It is also important to avoid bringing persons with disabilities into training programs that are not equipped to properly support their effective learning. Doing so could result in discriminatory or harmful experiences for these young people and damage our relationships with local communities. For this reason, we will be considerate in how we target and mobilize PWDS and provide information about what kinds of accommodations we can provide. All Going Beyond partners can include young people that identify as PWDS that have minor impairments and that the partner can reasonably accommodate. Examples of these disabilities include partial mobility, visual, or hearing impairments. For some Going Beyond partners that are PWD-led and PWD-serving organizations, or partners with experience working with PWDs, they might mobilize participants with higher levels of support needs, for example, youth that are fully visually impaired or fully hearing impaired. So, the key considerations for an inclusive training include actively involving persons with disabilities in program design and delivery, ensuring all materials are accessible, and creating a safe, respectful learning environment. Additionally, ongoing support and mentorship for staff help maintain inclusive practices beyond the training.